Hello and welcome. It's so great to see all of you here tonight. My name is Emily Loeb and I'm the Director of Programs and Education at the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh. And our mission is to connect the horrors of the Holocaust and anti-Semitism with injustices of today. As a granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, I want you to know that I truly appreciate you being here to bear witness and to hear Oscar and Lee's presentation. At the Holocaust Center, we believe it's critical for people to not just study the history of the Holocaust, but to also connect this history to real people and real families. I hope you picked up some of the materials about our various events and programs that we have at the table by the door. And if you didn't, please make sure to grab some on your way out or visit our website. We have a lot of great upcoming programs scheduled throughout the fall. So tonight's event is our first RAD Days event of the year. In a few minutes, you'll get to hear from Oscar and his daughter Lee Fischbach talk about his experience during and after the Holocaust. Our second event for RAD Days will be next week on September 27th, when we are going to host former Holocaust denier and now anti-hate activist Tony McAleer. And we'll be showing an abbreviated version of the documentary that was made about him called The Cure for Hate, and then have a panel discussion and a Q&A with Tony, and then the filmmaker Peter Hutchison and Pitt professor Callum Matheson. And they will discuss the lure of conspiracy theories, how people succumb to them, and how to advocate for understanding and tolerance. And we hope you'll join us next week for that event as well. And finally, I have a lot of people to thank for helping make this evening possible. I want to extend a thank you to the Regional Asset District for providing funding to the Holocaust Center, the Sylvia and Martin Snow Family Fund, whose funding helped us start and support the Generation Speakers Program, and the Holocaust Center is now part of the new T of L, and they provide support for this and other programming. I would also like to thank our Life and Legacy donors who've chosen to include us in their planned giving. And finally, I want to express my gratitude to my fellow staff members, Christina and Julia, who are in the back, and Marcel and Noah, who can't be here tonight, who put in a huge amount of time and energy to make our events and programming possible. We're able to provide our programming to the public because of the generous support of the organizations and foundations that I just listed and from our community members. And as a nonprofit, we rely on donations to be able to do our work. And if you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation, we greatly appreciate it, but we're also really happy to provide our programming free and low cost to the public. And if you'd like to make a donation or feel moved to, you can visit the table at the back or visit our website or reach out to me or one of my fellow staff members. And now I'd like to call up Hallie Leach to introduce Oscar and Lee. Hallie is a middle school English language arts teacher at St. Therese of Munhall, and she has hosted Lee and Oscar in her classroom. So Hallie, take it away.
Thank you. Okay, good evening. As she said, my name's Hallie Leach, and I teach at St. Therese School in Munhall. I'm a 7th and 8th grade English and literature teacher, and since starting about 4 years ago at St. Therese, it's been a goal of mine for Holocaust education to be in the curriculum. And you might be thinking, why is the literature teacher teaching history? They do go quite well together. We're able to delve into the history, but then we're able to make connections through the testimony and through the literature. So the Holocaust Center has been very helpful. They have provided teacher education, they've provided resources, but they provided connections. And I've been fortunate to have people come into my classroom, and there's no better connection that they can make with someone who's actually seen it and been through it. So I think that Lee and Oscar are probably the two favorite speakers that we've had. So they even want to keep writing them letters. All right, so I'm going to do my best here to introduce them on the pronunciation, so bear with me. So Oscar Singer was born in Radomysl Wielki, Poland in 1925. As a teen and young adult, Oscar survived imprisonment and forced labor in the Mielec, Wieliczka, and Krakau-Plaszow, Theresienstadt, and Auschwitz camps. Following the end of the war, he was held in a displaced persons camp. After receiving his visa to come to the United States in 1951, he eventually settled in Denver, Colorado. He married, had 3 children, and had a successful career in the restaurant and catering business for many years. While living in Denver, he spoke to many students and other groups, sharing his story of survival. A few years ago, he relocated to Pittsburgh to live with his daughter, Lee Fischbach, who will be joining us to tell their story today. And without further ado.
Thank you, Haley, and thank you all for coming this evening. It means a lot to have my father's experiences validated and to be able to hear him speak. I'm going to let him speak as much as he's able to. Sometimes it's difficult for him to talk about things, so we're going to do this together, and we will do our best. First, we'd like to go ahead and show a short movie that just starts us off and puts us where we need to be for the presentation.
Poland, September 1939. The German foe begins its ruthless march of conquest and sets the stage for World War II.
A captured airfield on the outskirts of Warsaw. The Nazi invasion is only 3 weeks old, but already the Poles are facing defeat. A jubilant Hitler arrives to congratulate his troops.
We came into one of the concentration camps. It was quite depressing to see them, and they were such in bad condition. It was quite warm, and they were sleeping outside. And every morning, the living would get up and move, and then we'd take the dead out that died during the night. And this went on for some days in there till we finally got the ones that were well enough, they got them into hospitals and got them into care so that they were repatriated.
So how did we get to this tragedy of historic proportions? Millions rounded up and herded into camps like these across Europe. Families exterminated, beaten, shot to death, or eventually sent to the gas chambers. 2/3 of the Jewish population of Europe murdered by the Nazis and their local collaborators between 1941 to 1945 as part of the Holocaust. 6 million Jews. Holocaust survivor Oskar Singer from Poland. His family, a memory. Oskar amazingly survived to share his story so the world would never forget.
That film was made by my brother. He could not be here today, but we're very grateful that he was willing to make that for us. As Haley said, my father was born in Radomysl Wielki, and prior to that, this was our piano in our home. And just to make things a little bit more human, I just wanted to show you what, as a little girl, I've always known about the Holocaust. Didn't really understand it that much, but I always knew there was really 2 sides of my dad. As this picture always showed it, to me it made perfect sense. There was my father, who I knew at some level was in some type of a prison uniform, and then when he was out of the camps. And it wasn't until I was older and people came over, they thought it was very odd that, you know, I didn't have an issue with my father being in a prison uniform. And then there was another side to him. But there's really always 2 sides to my dad, and he said that many times. There's his life before the war and his life after war. I was actually very lucky to live in Denver. And Denver, because it has a National Jewish Hospital, which really initially started off with tuberculosis and then transferred over to asthmatic, many survivors had compromised lungs because they had to work so closely with the glue and so closely with chemicals. So many of them actually emigrated to Denver. So where we lived was the immigrants, which were us. We lived on the south side of Alameda, and then the regular people lived on the north side. And my father owned a restaurant, and people all up and down East Colfax Avenue, if you've ever been to Denver, they were survivors. There was Micklin's Tailor, there was Modern Kosher Meat Market. In fact, even my dad met somebody who had the same tattoo that he had, which only like 2,000 people had at all. And so I always grew up that the Holocaust was always there. There was always a time in your life where something could happen, and we all knew that my father had issues where he would be up in the middle of the night and he would have bad dreams, and he would be screaming in the middle of the night. And whenever we would ask him, well, can you tell us a little about your family? It was always, he would just start to cry. When I was little, I always had freckles, and I hated my freckles. And he would say, oh, no, you look just like my sister Rachel. And so then that just made me closer, but I knew then he would start to cry a bit. And then I knew that, that's where it ended. So it really took me to get to this place. It took me, I don't know, I'm 65, It took me, 60 years to actually get here. And my dad really was never willing to talk about this, even as a child. He didn't really talk about it. I would just get little glimpses of it. But after my mom died, which was about 5 years ago, we thought about it and we decided we really do need to talk about it, because he's 98 and a half. We're really lucky. He has a really good memory. And we should be here, especially in the face of any Holocaust deniers. And we do go to schools, and we try to, if by hearing us, they might make a decision later on to do the right thing if they see a bully, or to stand up, or to do whatever they need to do, then we think it's worth it. It's difficult, but for my dad a lot of times, but he will talk as much as he can. But this is like just what my life always was, and which most Holocaust survivors are. I mean, many of them call them kind of like walking ghosts. How could you not be? My father did lose his entire family at 14 or 15, and he was all alone. And so many of those people were able to rebuild their lives as best they could, but as we all know, any type of trauma is going to create different things in different generations. But my dad is truly an amazing man, and I'm just so glad that you all came to speak to him today. Daddy, you want to talk about Radomysl Wielki, what it was like to live in your little village? How many brothers and sisters you have?
Yes, I had 4 brothers and 1 sister. And the oldest brother was Jacob, and the second, Walter, and then Oise, that's my name, Oscar, because that's my Jewish name, Oise, so Oscar, and then Abraham, that's number 4. And there was a sister, Rachel, she was the youngest sister there. And 4 kids. 4 brothers and 1 sister, and cousins, yes, and lots of Hirsch and all kinds of things. She made the name, and that's.
Could you tell us a little bit about your life in Poland before the war?
In Poland, it's just like that. There was nothing there. They didn't even have their own post office, because we had to have 2 horses that to go overnight, get the mail there, things there. So we were always joking, little boys, when we put in the mail there. You have to tell them where it's going, in the mailbox. So then we have a joke there. This was, and then we had to go overnight with 2 horses. The post office was the name Dębica, was around 24 miles. No, they don't go by miles, they go by kilometer, It's around 18 kilometer, and we go things there with the miles, it's all figured out. And if you don't put it by 4 o'clock, the mail won't get away. And also with the hospitals, when you're sick, it's very hard to. I had to go to a hospital one. We had to wait overnight. All my blood went out, and in the whole thing there was very hard. Maybe if the Germans wouldn't come over here, maybe we would have some computers. I don't guarantee, computers.
Everybody has computers, yeah.
Maybe not, they have computers.
Maybe not. But so he lived in the Galicia region, which is a southern part.
I'll let you do it.
And he grew up in a religious Hasidic family. And if any of you know the Hasidic family, even though today he doesn't look like that. He and his family would have had the black hats and the beards, and they would have kept Shomer Shabbat, which is guardian of the Sabbath, and they would have not worked or done anything, and just like you would have seen in Fiddler on the Roof. But like he said, his house was nothing like Fiddler on the Roof. It was 4 rooms and stone floors, and the boys had to go up on the roof and get the firewood, and there was no plumbing, and it was a hard life, but I think Daddy's always said you were pretty happy and content, right, prior to the war. Can you tell us what your dad did?
He was a butcher shop. He also had a butcher shop, but he was going to little countries and buy some of them were feeding the cattle, and I wouldn't say cattle. He feed the cattle, and that's and they make real fat. Here you can have fat meat because people are on the diet. They eat the fat. They eat the fattest meat there anyway, because as fat as the cattle is, then it's better the food. Skinny cattle, it's very hard. As always cows or everything else. And we went to the little countries there. We buy a little cow was 11. And the dad says, "You want to go with us?" With the horse and buggy, it takes a whole night, with the whole day to come over to our town from that little town. And we went over there and we bought cattle. Sometimes we had to get a sack, put it in a kettle with feet. And then I was 11 years old. And my dad used to say, if you want to eat, you have to go to help work. That's the whole thing.
And the cattle kept you warm in the middle of the night and that type of thing, right? So my grandfather, as you can tell, was a hardworking guy who he was a God-fearing man who believed in tradition and taught Oscar and his brothers and sisters to be strong, hardworking, and to believe in God and honor the commandments, as my dad still believes today. And Oscar's father was one of 5, and he was the only one who actually stayed in Poland. He had other brothers and sisters moved to Mexico City or America, because there were so many pogroms, killings, and anti-Semitism, even before the war. It wasn't like it was the greatest place to live. People fought. In Daddy's village, how many people lived in your village, Dad? About 250, 500? 500,
Yeah,
and I think 50% were Jewish, right?
Right.
But they lived separately. I mean, it was always a kind of their own ghetto. They weren't really welcome to live together. He did have some friends, but for the most part, they went to public school because there wasn't, a Jewish school. But every night he would then learn his religious studies after school. And Daddy's father believed that the Messiah, the Mashiach, would come and end his suffering. So Oscar's father told him prior to the war, well, when the war started, it was 1939. So throughout the years 1939 to 1945, when my father was incarcerated as a prisoner, he remembered what his father said. His father, before he left, he was forced out, he told him to say a prayer every day. And my father would say the prayer. Can you tell us? And he would pray silently during the whole 6 years that he was incarcerated and saw everything. And that's what he believes kept him alive. It was the Shira Hamalas prayer. And your daddy told you to say that when times of suffering, and you and your brothers, when you were together, said that, correct?
Yeah. You want to say that?
Okay.
This was every day he said, you can't say that because the Nazis, all the soldiers would see you start praying, then they're gonna make troubles for you. So you just have to do the prayers just with the teeth. It says Shira Malos. If I know Shira Malos, remember Makim. Lots of people know that too. It's right there when you start the services in the morning after Borg. Borg, then things there. Shira Malos, Makim, Kurusicho, Adoshem. But the way I say Hashem, this is God. We don't mention that thing. Adoshem, Sima Bakoil Tiene, Kashivos Lakoil Tachino, Ima Ruinos Tishmoyo, Adoshem, Miyamot, Ki Impu Aslicho, Lama Tevure, Ki Visi Adoshem, Kipshu Nafshi, Valadvur her Holte. Nafshe la doine me shoymum la boike, Jachel je schulkina door naar gezet, we hebben een mooi voor dit. Maar hoe heeft hij as destroyed the call of a noise. That's what Dad used to say. Even I remember when he used to tell him when the Germans came in with the motorcycles, with the planes started coming in. It took them a half hour or an hour to come in from Oberschlesien, you know, this was right near Sosnowiec, right there near Germany, Polish-Germany border. Took them a half hour, they came in from there, because they have all the motorcycles, and I said that Dad was making the services in the morning, and I said, Dad, they're right here, they're gonna kill you. He had the twill, you know, what people twill and talus. He said, better take it off because they're going to. He said, don't worry, Messiah will come in before they come. So there you are. I'm here 90 years old, never see him again.
So, but the prayer gave you hope, and you were reminded of your father's kindness every day. So he still believes in that prayer, and he believes in hope, and he believes that God saved him.
Yeah.
He didn't take one more, and he's still a religious person. So the Germans came to Daddy's village September 1939 when he was 14 years old. And the Nazis, as Daddy said, were able to defeat the Polish armies within days of occupation. Germany crossed into Poland about 4:45 a.m., and Poland declared war on Germany 2 days later. Daddy's older brother, Jacob, was a Polish soldier and was the only one in the village that was killed into the tank corps near Warsaw. Like my dad has said many times, he was the only one that died. And the boys then, Oscar's family was of course devastated by the news, but their only solace in the future would be that Jacob would be spared the humiliation and terror that the Nazis would rain upon the remaining family members. In 1939, as soon as the Nazis took over the village, they terrorized and began looting, humiliating Jewish people.
They humiliated the Jewish people, and then every 6 in the morning, they come aroused, comes to us to arbeiten. So what we had to do, like here they have all those bushes, we had to take care that we make the street clear, that their
Tanks.
cars, that the tanks can go by. What happened to be, they were lucky that for the Russian, they left them in there near Siberia, and this was, I think, close to Siberia, and then they all sent, they got stuck with the tank there. We knew about it, 1942.
And when the Panzer tanks came at the beginning, they had to clear the forest. So he and his brothers and all the boys were forced every morning, and they had to go and clear the forest, which is why to this day I say, Dad, you want to take a walk? He's like, no way. He has no interest in going to the forest. He has no interest in seeing trees. In Denver, as my husband in the audience can attest, we have no trees, we have nothing, because my dad hates it. He can't stand to be surrounded by that, and it just reminds him. And the Germans told the Jewish boys in the village that if they would willingly work for them, they would spare their families. Now, everybody has to remember, hindsight is 20/20. What they saw at the beginning was, okay, this is not the greatest for us. However, it couldn't get any worse than this. And that's how incrementally everything got worse for them, because you just don't believe it could actually get to that next level. And the boys actually believed they were on their way actually to run away, and they were going to go east, the remaining brothers and some of the Jewish boys. And he and his brothers were going to run away to the forest, but the promise of the Nazis and the boys' responsibility to the parents and the younger sister convinced them to turn back. And so every day they did submit to this type of labor, and people got beat, as the pictures can say. Actually, some of these pictures are from Radomysl Wielki, and as we all know, many of us in the audience, they were beat up and taken property, and they were then forced into a ghetto, and many people even came into Radomysl Wielki, and it was even worse and worse and worse. And so into 1941, when he was 16, Oscar and his two brothers, Alter and Abraham, and other boys in the village were then forced from their family, and they worked at Mielec, which is an airplane factory. Factory that my husband and I actually went to go visit. Daddy, do you want to show him your arm here? Okay. And there's only about like 2,500 people in the world really who got this particular one. And when I talked to even other survivors,
KL means, yeah, they had to make those things. because they promised nobody will run off, but they were afraid that we're going to run away from that because we were going there a few days. Then later they locked us up. They didn't let you go anymore. And they promised if you're going to go to work there in the airplane factory in Mielec, then they all let all the Jewish people stay there in
The village, and your parents, and they would let them live.
But after 3-4 weeks, we heard it in the factory. They were talking that they all took all the Jews and they took them away, and we don't even know where they buried them or where they killed them and so. And they were lying. But that's.
And so at the beginning, my dad said that he could get little bit of food, not food, but letters from his mom and dad. And then after a couple of weeks, there were no more letters, and so they knew things were bad. But no one would ever tell them actually what happened. But just the hope of seeing his parents and sister, kept him going throughout the 6 years. So my dad was always a big, brawny, strong man, and he had difficulty working with the little airplane parts. As you can see, it was a really big airplane factory that prior to the war, and they just continued on that, and it was a pretty, and so what they forced him to do is, first they thought he was a saboteur, because he couldn't work with the little parts. And then they realized that he was strong, and he got a chance. Like the one thing Daddy has always said is a lot of things in life, as many of you in the audience, is luck. Being at the right time, at the right place, having somebody give you a glance that said, okay, you're free, or you're not free, or whatever, but luck had a lot to do with survival. Certainly he has a lot of energy. He can, even when I was a little girl, he can live on 4 or 5 hours of sleep, always could. He's got a lot of energy, and that also helped him as physical, but also there's an emotional energy, but also his belief in God, hoping to see his parents again. So they did beat him a lot because they thought he was a saboteur, and threatened to kill him. But one day they said, he's a big guy, and we need bodies. I mean, that's the one thing that the Nazis did well, is they repurposed everything, as we all know. So they needed slave labor to keep things going. So they would work you to death. It was all about working you to death. And if you were unlucky enough to work, or if you were lucky enough to work, either way you had the same end. That's what the Germans felt. You were going to have the same end anyway. You might as well just work for us and do things for us. So as he would say, the Nazis would scream obscenities and hit him with a rubber hose or whip just to terrorize him and to prove their control and dominance. From 1939 to 1945, every day, many times a day, the Germans would yell at the Jewish prisoners and say, can you say what they would yell at you every day, if you're okay with it?
Yeah, that's was it all right when you worked, and when you couldn't work, then they put you to the side and then disappeared. You Arbeit macht das Leben hieß. And, they...
You want to tell them what that means?
But
you work like...
Das Leben. The work makes your life sweet.
Didn't they used to say work like a dog?
Laziness,
and didn't they say you work like a dog and you die like a dog?
Right.
That's what they would say every day to him.
You're not here to live if you have to work, but you can. And if you can work, we're going to get ready of him. That's what they did lots of times. People couldn't walk or couldn't talk, and that's happened to my brother, my middle brother, Alter. He was working in a factory. He
was at Mielec also, but he wasn't in the airplane. He was in the farm.
Not in a factory, in a farm he worked, in a farm, and he was making for corn, for bread, what we make to grind the corn. And he fell in. He was tired, was working half of the night, and in the morning, and then he fell in with his feet. So we didn't know. Afternoon, everybody talks about it, and finally they told me that they got poisoned him right away the first hour, so he didn't live. Soon if you don't work, you're not worth it. You're just like anything else. That's all.
So he did find out when he came home from work one day, everyone was looking funny, and he found out that his brother, Alter, had been died, as he said.
Right.
And then there was just two of them. His younger brother, Abraham, who was actually really tall, his mom was super tall and thin, and he could work with the airplane parts. So he had it hard also, but they gave him a break sometimes because he was adept at doing that, and he shared his food. If he got any extra rations, he always shared it with Dad.
Always, even the Germans, some of them brought him some bread every morning to help him because he was doing all the work, my brother, because they, you know, they were things they took the money, but they would do work. And then he brought him some bread to help him. But he was good, very good. I couldn't even fill a screw straight there. It was never good. And till now, even my wife never let me change a tire because she was afraid the car will fall on me.
Yeah, Daddy's not the most delicate about that stuff, but he's super strong, so that's good. He could probably just carry the car and just bring it somewhere else to get the tire done, but he couldn't change the tire, that's true. And one time in Mielec, this was the very beginning of his, so they were still young, they were 16, 17, and he was hopeful, and of course, there wasn't 1941, there wasn't Auschwitz that they knew anything about, there was no radio, they didn't know what was going on. They were still hopeful, they were young, and the Jewish prisoners planned an escape in the middle of the night. And that was at Mielec, and everyone was ready. However, someone overheard the Jewish prisoners, and the Nazis were waiting for them at their gates. And every day after that, there was an appel, which is a roll call, which they had anyway, but they would force them every morning in freezing cold weather, sometimes without clothes, sometimes with clothes, where the Jewish prisoners were left outside in the freezing cold for hours. And as punishment for even thinking of leaving, they would hang. They would pick anybody out of the that morning, the appel, you, whatever, and they would just hang you, and so that's what they'd have to look at all day long. They'd have to look at the poor people that were hung on the gallows, and because if one prisoner had escaped in the middle of the night, and they found that out even after the attempted escape, they would grab prisoners and just make sure that they would know who's boss. And they still killed people. Did they not still kill people at Mielec? I mean, you maybe got maybe you had a soup and a piece of bread. What did you get to eat there? And how many hours did you work a day, Dad? How many hours do you think you worked at Mielec?
Whenever we were free, we worked. We came home maybe in the night, 8 o'clock. They decided we have something to do, something else. Then take you out. They don't care about sleeping. You have to work. The Freiheit macht das the same way when you came into Auschwitz was always advertising Arbeit, you have to work. And if you can work, you end up in debt. So that's all it is. That's all it
and
is.
As like we said, at that point, that's when there was always dehumanization, but to brand someone like an animal just really started the dehumanization process. I can't say the word. In Mielec, my father was tattooed, like he said, with the KL, which is German for concentration camp. And Jewish prisoners in Mielec, Wieliczka, and Butzen were given this specific brand. And the Jewish prisoners were the only ones that were branded, so that even if the Jewish prisoners ran away, they could be found. They were also branded to remind that they were now Nazi property and they were no better than animals and had no identity or free will of their own. I mean, constantly to try to break people down is the way that you can get control over them. As my dad told me that the Nazis would be standing over them with the German shepherds, and
yeah, this was the hardest things. The German shepherd was right when you start thinking that very deep in things.
And in fact, he went after the war. In Auschwitz, he did have a number. Yeah, but it was more shallow. So after the war, he and his 4 friends, they took it off. They couldn't stand looking at it anymore. But the KL, they told him, was way too deep, and there's no way he could ever get that off.
You can lose your whole hand.
Right, he could just get infected. So he always wears long sleeves because he doesn't really like people to ask him about it, and he really doesn't like to look at it every day as a reminder. So however, when asked, whoops, sorry?
What?
Oh, when Oscar told me when I was a little girl, when he was branded, he would become sad and he wished that he could have it removed, and it made me like petrified of German shepherds. I couldn't even look at them, and he did remove the numbers. In mid-1943, Oscar and Abraham, the only ones left, were forced to work at Wieliczka salt mine. My husband and I also went there. It looks beautiful now. That's not how it looked before. In fact, they bragged when we were there about 10, 12 years ago that they never had any forced labor there since the inception of this salt mine. Totally not true. This was what they made later on to make it look beautiful, but basically it was, Dad, can you tell me what it's like at Wieliczka salt mine?
We came over there and we go into things, I don't know.
In a shaft, in an elevator with no light.
In an elevator with no lights and nothing else. I thought we were going something.
They were going to kill you.
Right, and they're going to get you right away. Without ammunition, they don't want to use ammunition, they want to kill you this way. But finally we do start cleaning up things after they gave it up. You can sleep in a salt mine. All this is, you go with the elevator right down there, and it's very hard there. I don't know if it's still there.
It is. It's actually there. But they claim that there was never forced labor since the Prince Casimir opened it, which of course is inaccurate. And I actually pointed that out to the lady. I said, no, actually that's not right. I mean, my dad can tell you, and he was there. But then in late 1943, Abraham and Oscar were transported from Wieliczka to Auschwitz concentration camp. And they were transported by cattle cars, and as many of you know, there's no water, there's no food, and by the time they open up these cattle cars, 25%, and certainly all the young children, are probably dead. So what they don't show in a lot of these films or whatever is everyone says, well, how could you be so docile? How could you just allow them to do the selections? One, they didn't know what was going on. Two, they were exhausted, they were hungry. Very rarely was there any food. If they were lucky, maybe there were hoses sent, water to hose them down. There was no bathroom. There was a pail in the middle of the cattle car that everyone had to use, and they had to salvage for food like dogs. So when they finally did arrive at Auschwitz or many of these camps, they were filthy, hungry, thirsty, tired, and emotionally and physically exhausted. But still, they had hope that, my gosh, with the stories they heard, none of that could be true. Can you say a little bit about when you arrived at Auschwitz, Daddy?
When we arrived at Auschwitz, they say you're going to take a bath, you're going to wash up, you're thinking, and then you start to work and things. But that wasn't like that. They picked the people, the sick people, like we were young people, 17, 18, something like that. Then they pick you up in the side. I didn't know what they take as special in the side. I thought maybe they're going to kill you different. I think finally he says, no, these people going to another place. The name was Plaszow, and they were bringing some, I don't know, it's hard to explain.
Do you want me to say it? It's hard for you to say it? You want me to say it?
Yeah, you
okay.
Say it. I can
so it's a little hard for my dad. So no sooner than they were forced out of the cattle cars, the selections began, as we all know, and the older people, children, and people not suitable for work were told to gently remove their clothing, and they passed it off as if they were going to return, which they never would. And then they went and took the shower, which was Zyklon B, which was the trade name of a cyanide-based pesticide, and poisoned them. However, if you were lucky enough to be selected for work, you did have that number tattooed on your forearm. Abraham, his brother, was separated from Oscar. I mean, like I said, Abraham was tall and thin, could do different type of work, but they saw my dad and they said, wow, he's a farm boy, and he looks like he's going to be able to do this type of work. So what he forced him to do, and once again, my husband and I saw this hill that now they're trying to exhume, and what it was Oscar and his fellow prisoners would sleep during the day, and then every evening they would be transported to, can you say Hajova Gorka? Is that right?
Yeah, the name was Hajova Gorka. They brought with buses some people from Germany, from Poland, from Russia, the occupied zone, but they took it over. And the other side, all the countries, they brought in people with gold teeth and nice teeth, all the rings and the things that they never brought them over there. The neighbors thinking only 6 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning we worked there. I couldn't work there more. I worked there for 6 weeks. Every day we went to work for 30 people. The boys, all the good, healthy guys, they were healthy. After a while later, they couldn't. Then we had to, then they shoot them right away, the people, but all the rich people, they brought them from someplace. There's a lots of little countries there, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Russia, Germany, they were against it, the Hitler, so against the Nazi, and they took them over there, and I don't want to say I was a dentist, but they gave us things that you have to shoot, they killed the people every night, 30, 40 people, and I had to.
They killed more than that, but I'll tell you. But there was 30 or 40 people that were in the bus that came, but by the end of the night, half of the people couldn't do it. They just said, shoot me. My dad would have to take gold from dead people or dying people's teeth and the gold rings and everything like that, and then that's how he would have, and he would have to grapple with his morality every day. Do I keep doing this or do I let them shoot me? And then, like I said, he always hoped that the next day maybe, or in another year, maybe he'd see his parents again. And so he did what they said to do. And some people here maybe in the audience would feel, well, I would never do that. And certainly that would have been your choice, but there's a point, the one thing that many of the survivors have is that word survival. And they wanted to survive, and they knew if they wouldn't do it, they're just gonna go back, because every day they went back to Auschwitz when they got the new kids, and they picked them up. And if there's always somebody new who's gonna do it, half the kids, maybe a third of the kids, you know, I mean, that must be horrible to go on a bus with somebody and know you're probably not gonna make it. And my dad, even today, he can judge a person, their strength level, their personality within minutes. And he's not wrong. I mean, even though he didn't go to college, he didn't do anything like that, he had to become an amazing judge of character. He had to know the Nazi's face and say, I better not look at this guy, or maybe this guy will give me a break, or maybe this one won't, or maybe this fellow prisoner is going to be a capo and tell on me. And so you have to learn how to be very, very wily, but then he had to grapple with what he had to do. And I think there's times, he obviously this is not something that he would have chosen as a vocation, but it's something that he did and that he lives with every day. And then it hurt him a lot when he found out that this went to Switzerland, and he thought, and in Switzerland, of course, used it for themselves. So then, so the gold from the gold fillings and jewelry would be placed in boxes, and the Nazis would gather it for the gold for their war machine. And as many of you know, every part of the murdered prisoners' bodies would be repurposed. Clothes, shoes, human hair would be spun into thread for the production of textiles, and army blankets and socks for U-boat crews. And defenseless human beings were used for gruesome medical experiments. I mean, most of us in the audience, we know that. The repurposing jobs were done by the Jewish prisoners, so they were further humiliated, where they had to do this work themselves amongst their own people. And then they were forced, like my dad, to grapple with their morality and mortality, and that's what the Germans wanted. They wanted to dehumanize you and make you into an animal. And the one thing my dad has always said is, in any situation, especially that situation, you make a decision, can they take away your humanity? No. They can take away your hair, they can take away your food, they can take away your family, but can they take away your humanity? And that's where they don't. And my dad spent the rest of his life not letting them or letting anybody take away his humanity, and that's what he taught me. So even though he did those acts and he had to do what he had to do, he was reunited with his brother, and that was the 6th week, and he was in Plaszow concentration camp. And if many of you saw Spielberg's movie, that was Plaszow. And my dad and I saw the movie with many survivors in Denver. There's lots of survivors in Denver. And my dad said, that looks exactly like Plaszow. And I said, Dad, it's a movie set. But it wasn't. They actually went to Plaszow, and they actually had it there. And he says, you don't understand. What you saw in that movie isn't even 1% of the horror and the horrible brutality and the murders that we saw. It was nothing. So when you see that movie, it was brutal and horrible for the rest of us. It was just a glimpse it was one day of their lives. So he was there from 1943 to 1943 to 1944, and he did the best he could, and he was at least reunited with his brother. And do you want to talk about your time in Plaszow? How much time do we have? About 15 minutes? Okay. And do you want to talk about your time in Plaszow?
We went from Plaszow.
I'm sorry, here, Dave.
Okay, so for Plaszow, we went to a town, Leitmeritz. Me and my brother went over there. They picked a few more people who survived and who came over there. They couldn't walk, and they couldn't talk, and they couldn't work. That's the main thing. We went over there and we were working in the name was like for a Schachwitz by Dresden, but I don't know if you ever heard of a big town, Dresden in Germany. That's a big town there. And there was little factories, and they were making the tanks. Whoever could do a little bit work, so they gathered with the tanks there, and we were working there for 6 weeks. And I told them the same thing what I said before. I can work. It's hard for me to work with all the
little parts, little auto
parts or things that I can do it. So finally, lucky they put me in the kitchen to wash dishes. You're gonna wash dishes for the big
officers.
for the Nazis there, and they ate lunch and everything. At least I got the leftovers there. I could eat a little bit, and it was then I was working in the kitchen there for 9 months, and we were there staying there.
So he was lucky, and like he said, so many things are luck. And one time he was bringing potatoes for his brother.
Yeah.
And his Abraham and his Selmites, because he wasn't just being a selfish pig. He could eat a little bit when the Nazis wouldn't look at him, and he could just throw it in his mouth. But he felt, you know, he wants to keep his brother alive too. And I know people that knew him in Denver, and I know that the story is accurate. And he did bring food back to his cellmates. Unfortunately, one time the Nazis did see him with a potato, and they did put the German Shepherds on him, and his leg is pretty badly scarred for where they put the dogs on him. But he, you know, wasn't going to give up his humanity, even as much as they wanted for him to give up his humanity. He wouldn't.
You betted your life to last. But what was good for some Holocaust survivors, they didn't care anymore the war because they were losing the war, and they were going down there because this was the last camp. They didn't even have any transportation to take us to Theresienstadt. They were building some crematoriums, and would it be 4 more days or 5 days, we wouldn't be alive
right, and
either.
He's right. In early 1945, things were going badly for the Germans. They kept moving further and further east because they were really afraid of the Russians and the Americans. So then you all have heard of the infamous, you know, the death march. So then they brought all the prisoners further and further west to Czechoslovakia in really overcrowded conditions, and they didn't have food. It was freezing. I think how long did it take you to walk? He had to walk from Auschwitz by Dresden.
6 weeks, and my brother gave up. He couldn't walk anymore, and they took him in the car, and they got ready, and we kept walking. They didn't stop because he was dead, and he died. I think I heard it a few days later. He just, or maybe he didn't die. They poisoned him into something. He couldn't work anymore because his dural camps and things. Then he just fall down right away there.
And he told you not to wait. I mean, there was no reason to wait with him, and everyone would have died. And they wanted to maybe see if the sister and mother and father were dead. So once again, he had to grapple with his morality. Do I stay with my brother, let the Nazis kill me and him, or do I keep going and do what my brother asked me to do and try to move forward? And so he chose to move forward, once again, having to deal with that all of his life too.
So we went forward, and we were keeping walking till we came into Theresienstadt. Theresienstadt was mostly Jewish Germans, engineers, doctors, all educated, mostly people, and they kept them in case they win the war, then they can help a little bit pride the Germans, you know, what they lost. But nothing happened. The concentrated things that 3-4 days later, when we came over there to Theresienstadt, the Russians came in 5 o'clock in the morning, and they opened the door for us, and we came just a little bit more alive. So.
Yeah, my dad's always said that as Oscar and the prisoners were walking, he loves the people in Czechoslovakia, and he said some of the people in the villages along the way would throw rocks at them, which wasn't great, but then some of the kinder townspeople would throw beets or potatoes for them to eat, and if the Nazis didn't see them, yes? Go ahead, honey.
Czechoslovakian people were very nice people. They were even giving me that suit that I was wearing.
Oh, in the first picture.
The first year.
Yeah, and once in Theresienstadt, Oscar cleaned the streets, latrines, the barracks, and Oscar and his fellow prisoners were also building the last of the crematoriums, as he said.
And a lot of people.
And that was, my husband and I also went to, Martin and I went to Theresienstadt, and if they had not been liberated on April 9th, or May 9th, 1945, all the prisoners would have died, because the Germans at that point were, you know, exhuming all the bodies and burning them so there'd be no record. At this point, the Germans knew they were losing, and they did not want to be held accountable for their crimes. So when Daddy woke up, when the Russians came, all the Germans had fled. I mean, they were cowards on top of everything. They weren't even willing to accept their responsibility. They wanted to live. Many of them pretended to be prisoners. Many of them couldn't, especially as an SS guard when you had your blood type underneath your arm. But for the most part, many of them made it through, and they were not held accountable for their crimes. But on May 10th, 1945, the Germans knew they were losing the war, and in the middle of the night, many Germans escaped, and the Soviets liberated Theresienstadt. And Oscar was one of the lucky ones that 4 days later he would have been dead in his own crematorium that he himself was building. As we all know, 90% of Poland's entire Jewish population was murdered. And he and his brothers, no, he had no brother. He and his friends, they met some people, and he became friends with them. Became fast friends with people, like I said. You make a decision right away. Do you hate the world for the rest of your life, or do you try to make things work for you? Do you want to talk about what happened after the war with your friend Max, or is that too hard for you?
Yeah, no, it's hard. Then we had a friend, he was with me over that too, was working and everything else. Then he said he wants to go home to his town after the war to see what, they had a big farm there, big farm, all the things there. And then he went over there to see. He said, I'll go with you, but I can say anything. I don't know what you got. So he went in there, me and him. His name was,
Max.
Max, yes. And then he says to me, you talk. And I said, no, you talk. I don't know the band. He didn't know the band either. He was just taken over the farm after the war, I don't know when, 42 or 43. Then he went in, all he asked him, is anything left for me that he can get it, something to
From
work.
his family that were killed, and the farm was now in the hands of a Polish peasant.
Right, they gave him with horses and all kinds of hell. And so what was happened, he said, just a minute, I'll show you what I got left for you. So he went into another room and picked up a gun. He shoot him right away. And I was trying to stay away. Didn't say a word, but I said, don't worry, you didn't ask what things, but he did ask what is left. So he went to the left and he killed him right away there. And I took him to another town, Tarnowska, and we buried him. And somebody told me, go to the Russian commandatura, maybe they can go in there to help him a little bit. And the Russian commandatura, the Russians said, we haven't got nothing to do with this. You should have come in to told us to do it about it. So I didn't, that's all it is. And I buried him in that town there.
So my dad was spared. In May of 1945, my dad was finally free. He had been under Nazi tyranny for over 5 years, but he was left with no family, no home, no education, no money, no profession, and no country. He did try to find his family members through the Red Cross, and he found out that there was no one left. The only one left was one cousin out of his entire extended family, and he met him in Landsberg displaced persons camp, and the Americans did their best, but they really didn't know what they were going to do with all these displaced persons.
Yeah, that's right.
And my dad didn't really want to stay. A lot of people stayed and made it worth, but I think my dad, probably had a little bit of an anger issue too, and he and his 4 friends, they were now 18 or 19, they lost everything, they had nothing to lose, and that's how my dad, I think, always looks through life. He really has nothing to lose. It couldn't get any worse. So I might as well just take a chance. So he's always taught me, and I don't know if there's any Holocaust survivor children in the audience, to take a chance. I'd say a lot of Holocaust survivor kids are a little bit screwed up only because they have a different alternative in many ways. We see what's out there, and yet our parents always do tell us to take a chance. You really have nothing to lose, but you're always surrounded by a great sadness also, because you can only go so far. You don't have the same experience as the other American children. But even the children of American servicemen, they were really badly affected when they opened up those doors of Dachau, if you've ever heard any of them say that. But he did not want to stay very long, so he and his friends moved to Munich. They had nowhere else to go. Everyone thinks, oh, great, the war's over. All these people were taken care of. These people weren't taken care of. The Americans didn't want them. My dad had to be sponsored. He had to find a relative, which he did in Denver, a living relative. But people had to be sponsored. So here the the displaced people had to live with the Germans. Where were we going to go? They had no money. They had no, anywhere to go. So here they had to live. My dad actually lived with a ex-Gestapo, did you not, woman who was nice, but he didn't really have much of a choice because all of Germany was Germany, and they all had to live together with their captors and their murderers. So I don't know, that must have been very difficult for you.
We were stateless, we didn't have any place to go, so we end up I didn't end up, I was there, things there.
So,
Then I said we went up, Landsberg was the place for the older people, Holocaust survivors. They got a place to go, they put them in there, and they were there. I was there maybe for 3 weeks or 2.5, something 3 weeks, and we were 4 guys, 3 guys. I said, what are our future going to be anything? All we have to wait, they tell us. And we're going to get applied for a visa. We have to wait 5 years to get a visa. So what can you do? We have to wait, it says.
But you did go to Israel. He did try, like in the Exodus, Leon Uris's book. He tried. He took a illegal
Israel
boat.
didn't let you in either.
And then the Egyptian.
The English people didn't let you in. The English people, they were against that. They were the war till Truman came in. Then later, 1941.
So you ended up in Cyprus.
Yeah, ended up in Cyprus. We were waiting for around 3-4 weeks, but they didn't move either. So somebody came in from
Italian Red Cross.
Yeah, somebody came in from the Catholic things there from Rome. It wasn't the Pope, but it was an assistant, or something. And he says, you got to stay here and things that if you want, whoever doesn't want to go, whoever wants to leave, they release them because we don't see anything that the English people didn't let you think.
Because it was 1946. They never knew Israel was going to be a country. And here are these poor people who have nowhere to go. They're stateless. They illegally come to Israel. They're denied entry into Israel. And so they go to a camp. And then they're told, oh, don't worry, it's just a camp. Well, they've heard that before, so they don't really feel very comfortable with that. And there was typhoid, and people were dying, and they never knew Israel would ever become a country. So when given the opportunity, he went back again to Germany,
back to Munich, Germany, and
with his captors and with people that he had tried to kill him.
Where you go, we're going to go to America because they say it's a good country. So anyway, and that's.
And there's, I don't know if you can see the pictures of yourself, but that's him in Germany with some of his friends. And so he tried to make a life for yourself. I mean, what are you going to do? Be miserable the rest of your life? Or I can't say with anybody with something that happens.
I worked. Whoever been in Munich, I worked in Hofbräukeller near the Autobahnstraße in Munich. I worked there and all around there. And then they sent me away to Modena, Italy. There they paid my things because I was pretty good in washing the dishes and a cook. So I like food, so that's what I eat. The things. I look like I have a bad So, but thank God for that. And I always believe in things that we have to do the best you can. That's all. You have to live with people, and you got to raise them like that. And just
my
like
dad's green card. He did end up finding out that he had one relative in Colorado, so he did end up going there, and the uncle, sponsored him, and that must have been quite a meeting. I just asked my dad lately, how was that the first time you saw him? And they said, well, we both cried. The man had left for England, like probably in the 20s, and then he had went to America, and he looked just like my dad's father. So, I mean, it must have been a pretty bittersweet experience. And that's his Emily Griffith School. And didn't they say you were like one of the best guys in English? And look at him today. You can see his English is impeccable, right? It's really, really good. But he only got to go for 6 weeks. But he was a teacher said he was the best.
Everybody says, well, what do you do in Munich, Germany? I lived there. They said, I'm waiting for the visa. How long are you going to wait? Where I said they told me 5 years, and he said, you can go someplace else. I said, well, I'm going to go to there.
South Africa?
South Africa and see. So I said, I'm not going to wait for that thing. So he said, you choose the best country. United States is a good country, and the money is laid on.
And he saved his money.
But I never found any penny yet.
And he saved his money, and he opened up a restaurant, an Italian restaurant, because he moved to Italy, because the Germans actually after the war were nice, and they saw how hard he worked, and they paid for him to go to Italy. The restaurant he worked at, and they taught him how to make. Nobody really makes better Italian sauce or pizza than my dad. So I have up there your little pizza card, and really and so he did make a life for himself in Denver. people would just assume he was an Italian. It was pretty cute. And then he was into bowling. So he was in a bowling convention. He went and found another Holocaust survivor, and he introduced him to my mother, and that was my mom. She looked a little scared there, but in that last picture, but she's really not that scared. She was kind of a firecracker, and there's a lot of women here from Mahjong, and they can attest to the fact that my mom was a firecracker. He likes them. And then my dad, he said he liked to be around food, and many Holocaust survivors do go around food. It's kind of a sick thing, but on the other hand, it makes them very comfortable. So many of them are in the food produce factories or whatever, and my dad made cakes, and he had a caterer. He was a caterer. I'm showing pictures, Daddy, of you. His eyesight is macular, so it's a little hard for him. But he was super cute, as you can see, and he made cakes, and he knew how to do that. And then my husband and I, Martin, who's in the audience, we went back to Radomysl Wielki. My dad didn't want us to, but we did. I don't know how many children actually listen to their parents.
I saw they did to my friend what they did to
he said he would never go back to Poland as long as he lived, and he did. He had an opportunity to go to Auschwitz for free, and he said he won't go. It'll kill him. It'll break his heart, and it'll kill him. So even though he lives and he makes cakes and he does what he has to do, there's another underside to that, and it's a dark side, one that you can't forget, all of those type of things. But he doesn't let him overwhelm the time he has life. Some people say that many of these people are like walking ghosts, and I don't know if, God forbid, anybody had to experience rape or any horrible experience or brutality of any sort of bullying. It doesn't go away. And yet my dad, I have immense respect for him, because he really believes that he's here today by the grace of God, and he tries to make the world a better place. I mean, even at our restaurant, we had people that would come that were hungry, and they say, Oscar, my God, he comes every single day. He's like, I know what it's like to be hungry. So yes, we're giving him food. And money is not an issue. It's not the money. Like he said, the Nazis tried to steal everything away from you. They wanted to steal your humanity. The one way to not necessarily get back at them, but to be a better person, is to not let them steal that humanity away. And for all of us, even in the audience, when we have to make a decision of doing the right thing, I always say my dad is just, he taught me that the Nazis, as I said, could steal your food, hair, or clothes, and all your worldly possessions, how you could never let them steal your humanity. And everyone has a choice to choose humanity over evil, and to choose hope, forgiveness, and love, and that's what my dad did. And he actually embodies what's right in the world, and I really have immense respect for him. And I really appreciate you letting me be here to share the story with you. Yes. Oh, yes. And is there anything else you want to add, Daddy?
No.
Okay. And I really appreciate you spending your evening with us. Thank you.
We are gonna, if I can get this off, open it up for some Q&A. So I'm sure there are a lot of questions. I'll come to you. Okay, just a second.
Thank you for coming and sharing your story. Question is, how did you overcome the feelings toward the Nazis, like forgiveness? How did you do that?
Overcome with the Nazis. All you have to do, yes, I can do it. I was ready to go. They're ready to take me all to the inspectors. They say, you're doing wrong, you're sabotage. I say, I can't help it, I can't do it. I do it my best I can.
And how do you forgive them now? How do you forgive them after the war? How could you live with them? How could you live in Germany? How could you forgive them now?
I would live in Germany, but still there are some good people every place. The war is still going on. They never stop. Listen, this war, and so many wars after the 7th war from Israel, and they do it every place.
Do you forgive the Nazis for what they did to you and your family?
I couldn't forgive some people there, but some people from the Nazis, when we were walking, some of them throw you bread and the things there with potatoes, raw potatoes we ate. So, and some of them throw you stones. So you can say that all Germans are bad, so, but very mostly are bad. They couldn't stop Hitler doing stuff. They think that why should they kill all the Jews there? They kill 6 million Jews for what? Because they have nationalities, or they believe in God, or they wear a beret. They can do it. It's a free country. I mean, just living like here, you can do what you want. You can free. It's a free country, so so long you don't kill anybody but things there. So that's all you can say. I can say that.
Does that answer your question, or we can? Is that okay? That's right. That's right. And you know, like my dad always said, you know, there's like people in a pond, right? There's good fish and there's bad fish. Right. And you're not gonna, if you spend your whole life looking for the bad fish, you're gonna find them. But you try to find the good fish.
Bad fish. That's right. So it's the same thing with that thing. That's all right. But it's still going on. It's never stopped. The war is going on there. Everything, every day something else. Somebody killed because he don't like this race, or they don't like this, and this is there's no reason for them to kill. So you have to talk to them. It's you have to do the best you can, and then you have to be in life. You have to treat the people like you want to be treated yourself. That's all it is. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
We have another question over here, Oscar and Lee.
Oscar, do you find it hard to, like, or do you often second guess yourself when meeting a person? Like, do you think in the back of your mind, like, can I really trust them? Am I really, like, are they one that is safe?
Tell me if I'm wrong. She wants to know, like, how do you make a decision if, right now, every time, like even in this audience, anywhere you go, how can you trust people after you've been, you've been brutalized so much, and how do you make a decision real fast? What do you do?
Make a decision. You can see on the person too. You can see on person the way he talks to you. If a man has a little smart, I will say a little brain, can see that man means business. He wants to be nice to you, and that's what it's going to be. So I have to be nice to them.
What
too.
do you use as your guide to want to be with people? Like, how do you know if somebody is somebody you don't want to be with and it's a bad person?
The way he talks to me after my age is now pretty close to 100 years, 89 years, 98.
He's trying to be younger, probably.
Yes, and so and I've been in so many countries, it never stopped, that hate never stopped. There's always yesterday they gonna the Russian like to be with North Korea because of business. All the wars is a business. The wars that is supposed to be in Europe, I want to say that in Europe they have all kinds of countries. Some of them are neutral, some of them don't want to be neutral, and some of them means business, money. The whole world is like that.
I'd have to say, to help answer that question also, is that my dad really, it would be shocking, but he really doesn't get angry. The only time he gets angry if somebody is really immoral and just awful, and he will stand up. Like I saw him even as a little girl. He can really scare you a lot, and because he's lived through it, he's got nothing to lose. But he really had hard times when people were disrespectful and hurt somebody, and he would step in. So to answer your questions, yeah, he didn't just sit as a bystander, didn't start anything, but he finished it.
I don't mean fight and things. We got to be nice to the people, like I always say. That's, you live into the world. Even they think certain things. We always tell them, I'll be able to do something else. So they put me in there. I couldn't do this drill in the airplanes, or they put me in to carry the airplanes, or they put me into work there. So they're trying to. So And some of them didn't. Some of them said, you must kapieren, wie ein Hund. This means you have to suffer like a dog. When you see a dog, I don't go to compare the people to dogs, but it's here, a dog gets killed, he hollers and screams, and he wants to help, somebody to help him. But it's the same thing.
Does that answer your question okay? Okay.
Oscar, thank you for sharing your story with us this evening. I would like to know if, Lee said that you've always been a religious person, but throughout your life, has your level of religiosity or religious commitment been the same, or has it ebbed and flowed at certain times in your life?
Yes, that's why my dad, when we went to little first grade, after I went to the public school, we talked Polish, we learned Polish. They didn't talk Yiddish to you, but always, then after the school, after I went to public school, I tried to go into the Jewish school afternoon, cheder they call it, or school, and they do it here the same way. Whoever wants to learn is okay. Some of them don't believe it, that's okay too. You know.
But I would say that his father, as we said, they were Hasidic, and he felt after the war, he never became Hasidic anymore. He's obviously not wearing the hats, he's not doing this, because he felt, if maybe once a year on Christmas, if they decided to be nice, right, maybe they'd give him a piece of meat. Whatever they gave him, pig, whatever, I mean, he had to survive. He went to the rabbis afterwards and said, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Many of the people stopped being Jewish after the war. They didn't want to be identified as being Jewish because it was too hard. Many friends even of his. But he said he could never go back to the level he was before because he chose to work on Saturday. He chose to eat. And he said that in the camps, there were some religious people that said, no, I'm not working and I'm not doing this and don't shave my beard and don't do that. And he made a decision. So to answer your question, he never could go back there, like he's not Shomer Shabbat. But he believes in God, and I can tell you we spent like 6 hours yesterday at synagogue, so I assure you it was a very observant service. He does not, but there's a point where he can only go so far. Wouldn't you say, Daddy? You can only go so far anymore? I mean, I'm sure you saw the pepperoni on the menu card.
Pepperoni, especially in Christmas that we were waiting. One Christmas we got some ham. The other people said, how come they taking the bones out? They get, thank God they got the bones too. What's the difference? So for nothing, what do you want? Better than you don't get anything in Christmas.
That was in the camps, if they had a little bit of kindness. But he did feel guilty about it, and he did talk to the rabbis about it. And I think you can't, I guess, even the way he had to live, you can't have some guilt, but you can't let it, like all of us, we can't let it overwhelm us for the rest of our lives. But he did make that choice. But he believes in God. Dad, do you still believe in God? I don't know if that...
Always in God there. I believe in God, everything else. Right, whatever I learn in school, I'm still with it. You have to learn. When you get educated, you're all things that I believe if somebody tries, even some of them have brains, don't get me, but they have it, they don't work. So, but you still have to believe God helps you, things that you're right.
He said that when people said, how can you believe that after what happened in the Holocaust? And he says, well, because God didn't take one more. So the one that he spared, he feels, and certainly that's what keeps him today. I don't think he could think any other way, because then he would wonder, what was it all for? So that's,
Anyway, we have to raise my children. I have two children. Amazing. My son is 2, and my daughter, they're 1 year each, separate part. So we raise them like that, and my daughter the same thing. So my son is a different spirit, things there, but he's all right too. So it was working.
Hopefully this isn't being taped.
I hope he didn't hear me, but he's all right. They have a speech, they say, I started to start.
Yeah, and then
yes, I just wanted to know, when the camps were finally liberated, could the people who were finally being rescued from them, could anybody even cry by then?
Once the Russians finally came and the Germans were gone, and you were all of a sudden free to walk around the camps, were you or anybody, were you able to cry anymore? Did you cry? What did you do? What was your reaction?
Reaction. I tried to help a lot of people, but I worked 9 months. I worked at the tank factory. That was, I say after the war. Then I saw what the fact is. Some of them do good, some of them do.
Right, like after when the war ended, when the Russians opened the doors.
Yes.
Were you able to cry? Did you cry when you saw the Russians and you saw the Americans come a few days later?
My tears a little when I'm able to cry now. Once in a while, I would cry, and when I talk like my daughter talked these days. I never taught her how to do it, but she learned it herself when she went to school or college. She went to school. I didn't have a chance to go to school, and I didn't have a chance. I went to school, learned 5, 6 classes, but that's about it. And we were doing things then.
I can say that my dad, there's times that, you know, he pretty much keeps his emotions in. My husband's a psychiatrist, and he probably would tell you that, you know, he hasn't ever, most psychiatrists don't even meet Holocaust survivors. They're not interested in dealing with their feelings. So crying, very few and far in between. When his cousin died, I mean, there was like 5 seconds of where he said, well, everybody has to die. So, you know, the children of survivors learned that, you know, emotions are not something worth having. So you don't have them. You just keep everything inside, and because how can you? I mean, your parents went through so much, and if your parents can't cry about what they went through, how can you? But I have to say, since there were so many survivors, some of them would secretly like come to our house, and like when it was Mr. Seawald, who he was the only one he knew prior to the war, who was like 10 years older, that they used to sell cattle to, and he lived about a couple blocks from us. And on my brother's birthday, which was October 10th, it was the same birthday as his son. And so he would come, and I was told, don't be sad about this. He would bring a present for my brother because his son was dead. And so we just kind of learned that, you know, dead people are with us. You know, you cry about it, but they're not forgotten. You know, like many of his friends were older than my dad, so they had other children that they're not going to forget. Do they cry about it? Yeah, secretly they do. And at night, my dad, to answer your question, for years he had night terrors. I mean, my bedroom was right next to theirs. He screamed a lot in different languages all the time, and my mom would have to wake him up. So yeah, they cry, but I don't think they're going to show it to the world, because I just don't think they have it in them anymore, truthfully. Yeah. Would you say that's true? Would you say you're an emotional person who loses it?
No, you have to do like with the world going around. That's all it is. You have to do like the people want to do.
Would you cry if you had a flat tire? Would you cry? He wouldn't. I assure you, the man wouldn't cry for much. In his dreams he does, but I have to say, since we started speaking about 4 years ago, his nights, he doesn't talk so much in his sleep. It's really strange, but he really doesn't. And maybe because he gets to be here and have good people like you listen to him, which is so appreciative, but he really doesn't have those horrible nightmares. But I would say most of them don't have much emotion. There's not that much left. I think their tears dried up a long time ago.
Hi. So you were in concentration camps. Were you witness to things like the air raids in Poland and like?
Okay. She wants to know, did you hear when you were in Poland at the beginning, and certainly he'll tell you at the end, I know he did, that you'll hear you hear the airplanes in the sky throwing bombs?
There wasn't in that town, they were working in that town. Mielec, where I worked in Fluchterweg, but the people who worked, the German people and the Polish people, they came in and they tell you today was a bad day for the Russian or today was a bad day for the Germans, the next day, you know. I mean, we knew everything what's going on without radios, without television, because the people were telling you they had homes.
And also he said that on his death march, to answer your question, he saw the Americans, right? You saw the Americans in the sky, and they saw all the guys in their striped pants.
When I was walking, that I remember very well. When I was walking, I said, we're going to get all killed because the jets were going. So the Americans and the Russian jets, they went to a bridge. The bridge names I remember was Auschwitz, was near Schachwitz by Dresden. If somebody knows the way it is. We saw with the planes there, but there was a big bridge. We had to pass the bridge. So they saw us with the uniform walking, and they were waiting till we passed the bridge. Then I saw that they didn't bomb. Then they start bombing. I heard those. You heard the noise when they crossed the bridge. Then they start breaking the bridge that the people can drive through anymore.
You know, over the years we've asked, and there's lots of, you know, I read a lot about history, and they ask, well, why didn't you just bomb? I mean, like my dad says, I'd rather you bombed Auschwitz, give us a chance. And they were secondary. That was not one of the, you know, the notes and all the military memorandums that they find now. The Jews were not priority. That's not what it was. Now, a lot of people say, no, it wasn't that. Also, the bombs weren't as good, and they couldn't have done that. But honestly, if you would ask any survivor, they'd say, we would have rather given a chance, got a chance, and been able to run to the forest. And even if you would have killed some of us, most of us were going to die anyway. So they would have looked forward to seeing air power in the sky. Did you see any airplanes in the sky when you were in Auschwitz or Plaszow, or just when you were walking?
Only when we were walking. Then we saw a plane going, but we didn't know. We saw a plane a lot, but we didn't know it's Germans or Russians or things because they were going very fast in height. They were afraid. Some of them afraid they're going to go down. Some of them afraid they're going to be shooted down, you know, with all the things there. But only I saw when they were walking, then we didn't have any transportation. We knew we have to walk, otherwise you wouldn't go nowhere. They were walking 6 weeks. Some of them couldn't make it even. Besides my brother, he couldn't make it either. But lots of other people couldn't make it. They were sick. Maybe from 500, maybe, I don't know, maybe we came back 250 less, 50%. That's all it is.
Does that answer your question? Because I can follow it up. Okay.
Hi. So I imagine that you just lived in fear, just constant state of anxiety and fear at the camps. And so when you're surrounded by so much darkness, did you ever get to have, was there ever any light? Did you ever have any good moments? It sounds odd to ask that, but did you ever get to, I would imagine you had bonds. Maybe you would create bonds with people that you're suffering with, and did you ever get to laugh? Did you ever get to laugh?
She wants to know that she is completely understanding that, it was a horrible, horrible time, but was there anything that you can remember that you met somebody that was special that you can remember, or did you have a time or anything where you might have had some sunlight in your mind as opposed to everything being dark and horrible? Was there anything in those 6 years that you can remember where it brought you a little glimpse of happiness that helped you move on?
Growing up in some places I did. Some jobs was good, some jobs was bad. Like different people came into lots of Ukrainians. They were a lot of working with the Germans too. Ukrainians, I have to tell you that. And some Polish people too working there. And even Jewish people were couples. I don't know if you heard about it. They were taking them they was running, they was speaking the language for them, and they will look what's going on, like behind police, yeah, like secret police.
Was there anything you remember that was good? Anything like, you remember anything about singing something like for Passover, or do you remember anything, or?
You couldn't sing there the Passover, the secret law. We couldn't sing there because they won't let you. The coppers won't let you get anything. No, we couldn't. We couldn't pray. We couldn't do all you can do. Whatever it is. Oh, yeah, Joe. In the barracks, the jokes were lots of. When you were sleeping together, and she was there. The boys were there on top. Like they have it in jail. One sleeps on the other one, sleeps on the same bed. It's big beds. How they're there.
But there was no light among the darkness. You can't think of anything where you met somebody special and they made an impression on your life, a good person. Okay. I guess that's unfortunately your answer. There is no light.
No light for depression. Going at 25 below zero, you have to go out 6 in the morning. They didn't even let you get dressed good. So things so put it up there fast. You have to be back 6 o'clock, and then in Poland, where I was, or Czechoslovakia, or Germany, or Russia, it's cold. I was in Russia there, but it's cold there. The cold comes in that gets you things that they didn't got the heat in the air. It was freezing, especially in March and February and January.
Okay, sorry about that answer. Fortunately, I guess there was no light.
Hi, thank you for sharing your story this evening. This is more of a practical question, I think. The portrait that you showed at the beginning, where was that taken, where you had your prisoner's uniform on, and then with so many things being destroyed to eliminate any kind of evidence of wrongdoing, how did you obtain a copy of that?
Remember with the Russian lady, how the Russian doctor after the war, she's curious, as a lot of people are, how the heck did you get that picture? If you in your prison uniform, although there are several places that people did get those uniform, get it afterwards as a history, the Russians did go ahead and take pictures of them. But you want to tell them your personal story, how you met, how you got those pictures? She's very curious. In that nice frame.
That nice frame. I wish I can get that lady back again, but I don't think she's 100 years old. She couldn't make it. She couldn't make it over there, not in Russia. So, but she was a Russian captain, and she asked me if he wants to go to Russia. And I said, what am I going to do in Russia? I don't think we speak good Russian. I speak a little Polish, and then it's mixed with Russian, but I can talk. And I said, I'll go with you, because I needed some uniforms. I need some little help. So I just went over there with her, and she said, came over to Moscow, and I met the mother there, and that's all I could say. And then I said, what are you going to do there? To myself, I said, what I'm going to do there? I want to go back to Czechoslovakia. So.
How did you get? How were the pictures actually taken? How did you get those pictures? She did it at the camp.
Right, she did it at the camp right away. This was 4:30 in the morning, so the daytime, she made me some pictures. She wanted to have the pictures to show the folks that she wasn't over there, released the prisoners. That's all.
And then how did you get the suit that you wore in that second picture?
That's what I say. The suit I got when a German police thinks they got me that picture, that not right from Czechoslovakia place, yes.
And they gave you the suit to wear for the portrait.
For the portrait, yes, right. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure that you're right. The Cashman doctor, she gave me that some there too. She gave me some pens to wear. I couldn't wear any other pens. I don't know where she got it from. Maybe she bought it at Salvation Army or second hand there. There was no new pens there. So I was glad to have anything else. I couldn't get anything there. Even my German gave me.
How long did it take for you to get those pictures developed? Like, she was still around? Like, how did you?
Yeah, she had the right. She had the pictures there. She went to Czechoslovakia in Prague. and she did it the same day they did it, that we leave them down. We leave them, we go back.
Does that answer? I mean, it's always been an odd question. It's always been odd too. It's very strange. But I had read after the fact that people did get pictures taken afterwards in their prison garb, and then of course you destroyed your clothes, right? I mean, they were filthy, they were full of lice or whatever. But this particular woman was a Russian soldier, and I think she kind of liked him. So she brought him to her parents. In fact, like he had nothing to lose, so he went to Russia with her, you know. But then he realized he didn't want.
Nobody else I want to go there. So I didn't want to go, but I had to go. She said maybe they have her father can maybe give you some jackets and things. So didn't have any choice.
Right. So that's what he did. What? I'm sorry. The picture was taken after the war. Yes, after the Russians liberated. Yeah, it was taken by a Russian soldier.
Are there any other questions? Well, Lee and Oscar, thank you so much. Let's give them another round of applause.
I thank you very much. So I thank you very much for that. Things that all we listen to that. Some people don't want to listen either. I heard that story before, they say so, but that's okay. Whatever. Everybody has their own money and can do what they want. They call it, it's a free country, so they can.
That's my dad's way of saying thank you for coming.
Well, I want to thank all of you again for coming, and to Hallie for introducing Lee and Oscar and having them come to your classroom. I know how important that is for the students, and also, I don't know what the reverb, did you hear that? Sorry about the reverberation. We hope everyone enjoyed the program tonight, and we hope to see you next week on Wednesday here at Chatham's campus and Eddy Theater to hear Tony speak. And please don't forget to grab some information at the back table. It has a lot of our fall programming, stuff about the work we're going to be doing with Violence of Hope, our Kristallnacht programming. We have teachers in the audience, our Generation Speaker series. And again, thank you for supporting the Holocaust Center. It's because of our community support and engagement that we're able to do this really important work. So thank you all for coming.